What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Atlantic Files, the number one podcast on the number one division in the NBA, brought to you by the Underdog Sports Podcast Network. As always, joined by your host, just me this week. It's just me, Alex Fishbein, with you guys, bringing you episode number 269. Of the Atlantic Files. Yes, we have been doing this for at least 269 weeks. Now, there's some break weeks built in there, too, so it's been even longer. But 269 episodes in, and it just keeps getting better. So, I don't have as much in our little pre-show rambling as we usually do because I'm by myself this time. So, let's just jump right into things. We'll probably have a little bit of a shorter episode this week just because you're really only going to hear my opinions they're the only ones that matter on this show if you catch my drift here. But that is neither here nor there. So what we're going to talk about, actually, before we get into what we're going to talk about, I want you to take a second. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe below, hit the bell for notifications. It lets you know when we go live with our episodes. We usually go live Monday nights. The last couple weeks have been Wednesday nights just because of timing and things like that, but you will usually catch us on Monday nights around 7 o'clock. And we go over everything from the Atlantic Division first, and then we get into the rest of the NBA and throw in some banter here and there. But so if you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share with a friend as well. And we are also on Spotify, Apple, Google, Podcast Addict, all that kind of stuff. Just search the Atlantic Files. You should be able to find us on there as well. We greatly appreciate any support and any of you guys listening or showing it to a friend or whatever it may be. Hell, even write us. We might get some people on here to talk with us about basketball and everything. And we'll definitely, if you have any questions or want us to talk about any topics, jump in the live chat whenever you want, or leave a message with your question or topic, and we will get to that the next episode that we record. So, without further ado, we are going to talk about the NBA playoffs, essentially. Not really many outside topics that we're going to hit on here. There's a couple things going on outside of the playoffs, but to be honest, they're really not that important because we're all here for one thing, and that's to see who's going to win the NBA Finals. So, I'm going to go over specifically the two series that involves Atlantic Division teams, and then after that, we're going to talk about some of my other playoff observations, Draymond Green suspension, Jaren Jackson Jr. winning Defensive Player of the Year, while De'Aaron Fox won the first ever Clutch Player of the Year, and maybe see where that takes us. So, I am going to start here, to probably nobody's surprise, with the Sixers-Nets series. So Sixers are up 2-0. Pretty much what everyone expected. I mean, this series isn't really taking any drastic turns so far that last year's did with the Sixers against Toronto. That one was, one that everyone also assumed was going to be a sweep. It was going to be easy, so on and so forth. The Raptors ended up winning a couple games, making the Sixers really have to work for things. Then, Siakam throws an elbow, breaks Embiid's face, and then so on and so forth. You catch my drift here. The Sixers this time around seem as though they're not bullshitting as much as they were last year. They didn't have to, come in game 2 and win on a buzzer beater, or game 3, whatever that was last season. They didn't really have to struggle at the end of games so far in these two games. They came out, shot the lights out in game 1, set a franchise record for most threes made in a playoff game. It might have been made in a game, any game, regular season or playoffs, but I know for sure it was playoffs. They hit 21 of them. I mean, the whole team looked good. Harden had his issues here and there, but he made up for them by hitting 7 threes. Embiid looked great in and of himself again. And then on top of that, you had a lot of contribution from the role players, from the bench players. There was just a lot of contribution all around that really made you look at this Sixers team and be like, wow, they could potentially go pretty damn far if this is how they're going to play. I mean, you had Joel Embiid, who had 26, only 5 rebounds in that game, but PJ Tucker was a huge factor in game 1 with his offensive rebounds. He had 5 of those. 5 of his 7 rebounds were offensive. He had 5 steals. I mean, it seemed like everything he did was at a big moment in the game that they just really needed at any time, and he was there, ready, willing, and playing anything that, doing all the dirty work. Like I said, James Harden hit 7 threes, but he did shoot 8 for 21 overall. So he only made 1 2-point shot. And so he attempted 21 shots overall. 13 of those were threes, meaning he went 1 for 8 from 2-point territory, which is quite awful, especially for a guard. The one thing I noticed straight from the get-go in game 1 was that his explosiveness and his ability to get to the rim just wasn't at what it normally is. He was still getting past the defender and everything, but when he finally got to the rim and got to the point where he could take the layup, he wasn't exploding up to the hoop. So he was getting blocked from behind. The help defender was coming over and blocking him. They're not calling the foul on that sort of thing either. I mean, this has been 2 playoff games now. If you want to count last season, 3 playoff games in a row that he hasn't attempted a single free throw. So for all those people saying like James Harden can only do well with free throws, I mean, he did do pretty well in game 1 without free throws. Game 2 was a different story, but we'll get to that in a second. It's just the overall, like the athleticism, the explosiveness, for lack of, I mean, I don't want to keep repeating myself there, but like that's kind of just where I'm going in that sort of area with James Harden, is just that when the explosiveness isn't there, when he may be getting by defenders, but he's using all that energy to get by somebody and not actually elevate at the rim and get the ball up to where it needs to be so that he can't be blocked, that's going to be an issue. There was multiple times that while he did shake his man or get past his man for a second, it didn't feel like he was going to finish the play. Just watching the play unfold, it was like, oh, he is either going to get fouled and miss, or they're going to block that shot because he's not moving as fast or getting as high as he needs to be. And then we saw Day'Ron Sharpe erase his shot. We saw Claxton erase one of his shots. We saw help defenders come over like Royce O'Neal and Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges and just take his layups away. The same thing happened in game 2. I mean, game 2, he shot even worse. He shot 3 for 13 overall, 2 for 8 from 3, which means he was 1 for 5 from 2 points. So both games combined, he's shot 2 for 13 from 2-point land, which is not something we're normally talking about for really anybody, let alone James Harden of all people. But he is going to, with the Brooklyn series, I think the team can survive with him playing in this fashion. But the moment they advance here and the moment they start to play better teams like the Boston Celtics or the Milwaukee Bucks or the Knicks or the Cavs, he's going to have to do more than just one game here and there of a 3-point explosion to actually win 4 games in a series to advance. And that is even with Maxey, playing super well like he did in game 2, Embiid being Embiid, and PJ Tucker giving you all the hustle points and all of that. Harden still I don't think he has to be absolutely elite. I don't think he has to be, MVP level James Harden that he once was in Houston. He just has to be very good. He has to limit mistakes. He has to take what the defense gives him and turn it into production, whether that's an assist, points, whatever. He just has to be solid. He has to be consistent, and he has to be very good. Does he have to put up 25, 15, and 5 every game? No, he really doesn't, because the team does have the necessary pieces around them to be able to succeed without him having to do all that. Does he have to get like 18, 9, and whatever? Yes. He still has to do that. He still has to be the distributor that he has been this year. But he has to be able to make defenses pay on every level of the floor like he usually is able to. Because when you start to play teams like Boston, who will throw Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, Jaylen Brown, I mean, all of those guys are going to be thrown at Harden, and they are all the level of defender, if not close to the level of defender of Mikal Bridges, at least in terms of covering James Harden. I'm not saying like Malcolm Brogdon is going to be able to cover be able to be the versatile defender that Mikal Bridges is, but they all can switch, they all have length, they all play good defense, they all can cover Harden. And you might have heard this if you guys watched our episode or listened to our episode a couple weeks ago, but BJ Boyer, that we had on as a guest, friend of the show, he said the main issue for the Sixers against the Celtics is going to be James Harden, not Joel Embiid, who Joel Embiid has been the one that he's usually the guy that has the history of not playing well against the Celtics, but as he learns more and more to pass out of double teams, to get the ball moving quicker than it has been, and to be able to, kind of neutralize that defensive effort, he has started to improve in those situations. But James Harden against defenses that have length, that can switch, that he can't blow by, and that can still get a hand on the ball when he's going up for layups, is exactly what's going to give him issues. We saw it in Game 2 with Brooklyn. Since he wasn't hitting his threes, he wasn't getting in and getting any layups either, because you have guys like Bridges, Cam Johnson, Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, Claxton, even Day'Ron Sharpe. Those guys are all getting a hand on the ball when he takes it to the rim, because he's not the explosive guy he once was. So if you're telling me he can't even do that against the Brooklyn Nets, then there's no way he's going to do that against the Boston Celtics. So that is going to be a big thing to watch in that area. And what I'll do here is I will actually bring up some of the things that I'm talking about here, because if I show you guys some of the shots he was taking, so we'll go to the stat sheet here, and let's just bring up his attempts. So a lot of these attempts, and let me zoom in here because we don't need to see the shot chart. So it was even the fact in Game 1 where he made that first layup, but the layups after that just kind of progressively started to get worse. And when his step back isn't dropping, when his shimmies and get to his spot on the court, if those aren't dropping, a lot of times not much is dropping after that. His floater hasn't been very good. There's just a lot of his offensive arsenal right now has not been great. So there's a lot of things that Harden is going to need to improve to really have the whole team improve. Now, the one thing I will say with Harden, especially in Game 1, his distribution has looked great. He's been able to find a lot of guys in their spots, in open situations, and get them the look that they want to get. He's been able to hit guys like PJ Tucker and even George Niang and Maxey and Tobias Harris and get those guys in open portions of the floor to really have them thriving on the offensive end. And we saw that a lot in game 1. Game 2 a little bit, but not so much. Like right there, he really, as you can see, his Euro wasn't even that great there. I mean, he Euroed just pretty much straight into the defender, but didn't even have enough lift to really get the ball up and over the rim. And that is not like it's I should say it is a common scenario, a common theme in this series. Right here again, 2-foot driving layup. He doesn't even get around Claxton. Claxton does a good job getting his hands up and not fouling him body or with his hands. So again, a miss. Now this step back, if he's hitting those like he was in game 1, it's a completely different story. But again, and for those listening, not watching, we are putting up some of the highlight reel from game 2 here just to give you guys a heads up of what exactly I'm talking about. But yeah, it's a lot of those ones that he just runs out of steam. That's like kind of what it looks like. And whether that is from being older in his NBA years or just not in the same shape he used to be, whatever it may be, it's gonna have to change. But with that being said, he still played well enough in games 1 and 2. He had 7 assists and 4 steals in game 2. He had 13 assists and a steal in game 1. So if he's still distributing like that, the team more or less should be fine. Mikal Bridges, I think, is always going to steal the spotlight, even from Embiid in this series. Even though he didn't play that well in game 2. In game 1, I mean, the man was just unstoppable. Well, I should say in the first half. It's been for whatever player goes off for Brooklyn, it's been a story of they go off in the first half and then the second half they kind of just disappear and they're never to be heard from again. But I want to bring up some of Mikal Bridges' highlight reel here because the man was just straight cooking in game 1, and it for a while there looked like the Sixers were going to have absolutely no answer for it because he was literally getting any single thing that he wanted. From the floaters, from the just getting to the rim and getting a dunk out of it, from the mid-range, from 3-point getting set shots or pull-up shots. I mean, he literally was doing anything he wanted, which surprised me that coming out in the second half, it didn't even seem like the Sixers changed a whole lot. They did send more double teams whenever he caught the ball. So they did try and speed up his game a little more. They didn't let him, like in this situation, just get the ISO, get a couple screens, and get to his spot. They weren't letting him do that as often. They did try and just cause a little more chaos, which did work for the most part because, he had, 30 or 31 points overall, but I think 26 of them were in the first half. So he really only put up 5-6 points in the second half. Excuse me. He really is just going to continue to shine. And even though the Nets probably won't win this series, this is going to set them up so well for the future. We get to see their new star in Mikal Bridges blossom. They get to see his offensive game grow. They get to see what he can really give them if he is the number 1 option or even the number 2 option moving forward. And then all you have to do is start adding another star in there to play alongside of him. Start dropping in a little extra role players that probably can play a little bit better at the guard than Dinwiddie for starters purposes. I don't think Dinwiddie should be your starting point guard, but he's a perfectly fine backup. And yeah, I just think this is a great opportunity for them to really see what the future can hold. So, I mean, definitely hats off to Mikal Bridges. I love Mikal Bridges' game, everything about his personality, and even what his mentality and what he brings to the game is bar none. I will say the X factors here. Cam Johnson has played great. He's played tremendously, especially in game 2. He was the one that caught fire for Brooklyn. Brooklyn has shot, honestly, they shot very well in game 1. They shot 55% from the floor, 44% from 3, but the Sixers just took more shots and still shot well. I mean, they made 21 threes and they shot 48% from 3. They still shot 47% from the floor overall, but they attempted 89 shots compared to Brooklyn's 70. So the big story in this whole series so far has been second chance points and offensive rebounds, which PJ Tucker has been amazing on that end. B-Ball Paul has played the best you could ask of him in his support minutes when Joel Embiid's off the floor. So that's the biggest thing. The biggest surprise here probably is the fact that Tobias Harris has been extremely consistent. In game 1, he had 21 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, shot 64% from the floor on 14 attempts, even went 3 of 3 from beyond the arc. In game 2, Tobias put up 20 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal. Again, shot 57.1% from the field. And this time only 1 of 3 from 3, but I mean, it didn't much matter. He was a +9 in game 2 and a +12 in game 1. So Tobias, definitely shout out to him. He has been a big X factor for Philly, especially with James Harden not playing well in game 2. They needed somebody else to step up other than Maxey and Embiid, and Tobias was the one. So let's jump off of the Sixers-Nets series here, and let's jump over to Knicks and the Cavs. So I really did think that this series was going to be fun because these two teams are a lot more evenly matched than people originally thought. And that is in large part due to Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson has been electric. He's been, I mean, people are going to debate whether it's been Randall or Brunson or, you know, whoever it may be as the best player. Some people are even saying like Josh Hart is really the only reason why they're doing what they're doing. But with that being said, I think Brunson's the best player on this team. I think Brunson has really developed something for this team that they have been lacking for a while, which is just a competent starting point guard. I honestly don't know the last time I can say the Knicks have had a competent starting point guard. It's been that long. So Brunson has just been great. I mean, it's, again, another shame on Dallas for not paying him, for not keeping him around, because as you can see, the Mavericks are sitting at home. They're on vacation. They're not in the playoffs. They're waiting to see if they get a number 1 pick. And the Knicks are tied 1-1 with the Cavs right now. They stole a game on the road. Now they go back home with a game in their pocket. Assumingly they win the 2 at home, they get a 3-1 lead. All you got to do is take 1 more, and you can even wait till you get that 1 more at home. So they are technically in the driver's seat of this series. And the big thing now is, you know, is Julius Randle going to be okay after the, when Jared Allen tried to get up and block him on a fast break towards the end of game 2. Some people discuss whether that's dirty or not. I don't think it was a dirty play. Jared Allen is just a guy that's never going to stop hustling, whether he's up 20, down 20, or whatever it may be. So I don't think that was a dirty play at all. I just think it was a bad luck, bad circumstance, whatever you may say. I don't think Jared Allen really meant to do all that. He just was making a play on the ball. But with that being said, we need to know if Julius Randle is 100%. We need to know if Julius Randle is going to come back into this game or in this series and be able to play to the best of his abilities, because while I said all those great things about Brunson is not going to be able to win a series by himself, especially when you have guys like who were supposed to be a huge contributor in RJ Barrett. I mean, RJ, man, I had high hopes for RJ. I thought RJ was improving. He seemed to be improving here and there. He'll improve for like a month and then just sink right back down to where he's been for years. And I know Dennis will inevitably probably listen to this or watch this and be like, I told you so, especially because if you guys look back on our YouTube or even on our podcast feed, we talked about who had the better trade offer to the Jazz for Donovan Mitchell, and I did say that I thought the RJ Barrett trade package was better than the Colin Sexton trade package. But now that we see Lauri Markkanen and company and what they were able to do, it's very clear that they made the better trade of the two. Especially, I mean, in these two games, game one, RJ Barrett shot 2 for 12, 1 for 5 from 3. He did have 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, so he contributed a little bit in other areas, but he was overall a minus 13 in 31 minutes. In game 2, he shot 4 for 13, didn't hit a single 3, went 6 for 7 from the line, 3 rebounds, and 1 steal. Also a negative in this one. He was minus 2, which was also the best of the starting 5. Everyone else was minus 7, minus 10, minus 8, minus 10. And in this one, Josh Hart was actually especially worse. He was minus 29 in the 26 minutes that he played. So not a big Josh Hart game. But he was also trying to come back from an ankle sprain, which was strictly just trying to get a pain tolerance there for him. But for the for the Knicks to win this series, we're going to have to see a lot more of, I mean, this is an obvious statement. We're going to have to see a lot more of what happened in game 1 compared to game 2. We're going to have to see the defense swarming a lot more. We're going to have to see guys like, even though Randall didn't shoot all that well in game 1, I believe I'm looking at game 1. I hope I'm looking at game 1. Yeah. Even though he didn't shoot all that well, he was still playing the role of leader pretty well. And he was getting some boards. He was distributing a little bit in there. He got his hand in on some steals, so on and so forth. But they also got a good outside of scoring game from Quentin Grimes. He was a plus 10 when he was on the floor. Obi Toppin played well in the 14 minutes that he played. They're going to need some more additions from guys outside of Randall and Brunson. I mean, that was a big Hart game as well. 17 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. You would hope that a guy like Mitchell Robinson would be able to play some better defense and contribute a little more as their starting 5. But Mitchell Robinson at this point has largely just been a negative. Even in game 2 when he had 4 blocks, he could only muster up 2 points. He had 2 turnovers and 5 rebounds in 21 minutes. The 4 blocks are nice. Don't get me wrong. When any kind of center, anybody can get you 4 blocks, that's usually a good day. But his level of defense is just not the game-altering type of defense that everyone once hoped it would be. His rebounding is usually very good. But when, for instance, Julius Randle could be struggling, Brunson, might not be hitting with the same efficiency he does. In game 2, Hart's not having the game that he has when, they get their wins. you just hope that there can be somebody to get you some easy buckets, some second chance buckets, some lobs to the rim, whatever it may be. And Mitchell Robinson just is never that guy. He just never truly helps in any area. And it's almost as if, like, why are you even on the floor at that point? In game 1, Isaiah Hartenstein was kind of the X factor for a little bit there. The team was a plus 19 with him on the floor. He had 8 points, 5 rebounds. That's it. He didn't supply anything else. He didn't have any blocks, turnovers, any of that. But the big thing was he wasn't turning the ball over. He wasn't, letting his man score at will. He was playing just consistent, solid basketball. And sometimes that's really all you need. Especially when you're the Knicks. If you have guys you have your main guys there trying to go off in terms of Brunson and Randall and whoever it may be. Your role players need to play mistake-free, solid basketball, and they need to stay in their lane and do their job. And I'm talking about even guys like Quickly. Game 1, Quickly didn't even hit a shot. He was 0 for 5 from the floor. The only reason he scored is because he had 3 free throws. He wasn't really distributing the ball much. He only had 2 assists, and he turned the ball over 3 times. In game 2, Quickly in 23 minutes, started hitting some more shots. He had 12 points, 2 steals. Again, only 1 assist to 1 turnover. While Quickly has normally been that spark plug off the bench scoring-wise, we've seen him also be the distributing type, either while he wasn't scoring or occasionally at the same time. Well, they're going to need a little bit more of that from him. They're going to need a little bit more of the distributive side on top of his 3-point, I don't know, is lethality a word? Lethalness? Hey, they're going to need the threat of him actually hitting some shots. They're going to need the threat of him creating his own shot. They're going to need all of that. They need the consistency on offense because their defense, even though it may be decent, is not always going to work against a team like Cleveland, who has the likes of Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley. Like, those guys are more often than not going to get theirs on offense, whether your defense is top-notch or not, especially Mitchell and Garland. They're going to get theirs at some point, no matter how good your defense may be. Because even in game 1, their defense, the Knicks defense was solid, and they ended up winning the game by 4. And that was with Donovan Mitchell scoring 38, right? So we saw Donovan Mitchell get his. It wasn't pretty, but he got his. Garland shot actually very efficiently, but he wasn't distributing. He scored 17 points, which was decent, but he had 1 assist to his 5 turnovers. He at least got some 4 steals and a block in there. Evan Mobley only had 8 points. Got his 11 rebounds, whatever it may be. Karis LeVert shot 1 for 7. He was pretty terrible. But then you bring in game 2. Donovan Mitchell did not have the same game he had. He only scored 17 points, but he shot 54% from the floor. He also put up 13 assists. Darius Garland shot 47% from the floor, 60% from 3, hit 10 of 11 of his free throws. He had 32 points and 7 assists. Karis LeVert, 9 for 16. He had 24 points. Evan Mobley, 13 points, 13 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks. They are going to get what they want on offense at some point. So that means while your defense has stayed solid for the most part, I mean, in this game, even though they put up, those 3 guys put up a pretty big point total, they still only scored 107 points, which in today's NBA really isn't all that much. But the offense is what has to get more consistent. And I'm sure that's not, some crazy out of this world statement, but that's what's going to happen. That's what needs to happen if the Knicks are going to take this series and technically what is an upset. It's not like, I don't think the Cavs should be, I don't think they were favored by all that much. And I don't think they should have been favored by all that much. But, it is what it is. But in a series against a guy like Donovan Mitchell, against a guy like Darius Garland, who, we truly haven't seen Darius Garland unlock his highest potential yet. Not just playoff potential, but potential in general. We're still seeing that happen. We're still seeing Evan Mobley grow. This team for Cleveland probably will hit a bigger stride for a championship contention next season, even though they're a 4th seed this season. So this team right now, there'll probably be some changes going into next year, especially depending on how this series shakes out and if they make the second round and so on and so forth. But they are going to be better next year than they are this year. So it's on the Knicks to really say, what are we going to respond with? So I just want to bring up a couple of the highlights here as well for the Knicks, because you can't just bring up one and not the other when you got New York playing pretty well. So I wanted to bring up Brunson's highlights here because, like I was talking about, Brunson is going to be the most important factor for the Knicks. And it's not like, like some undercover X factor or anything like that. Like, no, I would say Brunson's their number one option. A lot of people probably would argue Julius Randle, but I'm saying Brunson should be the number one option because he's the most consistent. He's the most consistent to me. He's working the hardest, at least from an outside perspective looking in. He's becoming the leader. He's becoming the floor general. When we watch Julius Randle over the past few seasons, he doesn't show leadership to me. He doesn't show taking the team under his wing and taking them to new heights, to quote the Kelsey brothers. He doesn't really take them to new heights. It's Brunson that is taking them as far as he can go. So that's why I think Brunson is the most important factor of this team. And right after him, I would say it's Josh Hart, and then it's Julius Randle, because we've seen the kind of energy, momentum, and even talent that Josh Hart has brought since he has joined the Knicks. So I think it's that order in terms of importance on this team. But watching Brunson just get to his spots, and make sure that he, despite being probably the smallest player on the court, get to his spots and get his buckets is just been really fun to watch. And it's going to continue to happen, especially if this team ends up winning this series. It's going to be led by Brunson. And I'm sure if they win this next game at home, my bet is that Brunson has more than 25 points. That's just where I'm going with it. But that takes me into some of the other playoff observations. So I haven't been able to watch every single series, especially the ones on late at night here on the East Coast, because I'm just not built like that anymore. I can't stay up that late, all right? But one of the series that I haven't really watched much, honestly, even though it's not on late, is Miami versus Milwaukee. It's just unfortunate that we saw Tyler Hero go down with a broken hand, or multiple broken fingers it ended up being. Giannis is out. Honestly, if I'm Milwaukee, even with Hero going down, I'm a little worried. Just saying. Is a little worrisome. There was a quote, I forget who it was from. It was one of the national TV analysts. They said that Tyler Hero was a bigger blow to Miami than Giannis was to Milwaukee. And for a second, I agree with it because Miami's bench has been pretty awful. Giannis has been, in the MVP race. And when you read that at first, you're like, all right, losing an MVP is obviously a bigger hit than losing Tyler Hero. But the Miami team, I honestly have not taken seriously from day one because of how many injuries they have endured. The team never stays healthy. So at first, I was like, having one of their top players go down, well, he is by fractions of a point, he is the third leading scorer on Miami. And when he goes down, your next best options are either Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, and Kyle Lowry. In another time period, Kyle Lowry might be something. But, we have yet to really see Kyle Lowry really do anything of importance in this season, really at any point in this season. He might have had a few good games here and there, but there's nothing really to, write home about. And it is what it is. But then you come up with, game one of this series, and Miami Jimmy Butler steps up as he always does in the playoffs. Playoff Jimmy is playoff Jimmy. The dude is good. Bam, who is probably the most criticized with how he's played and how he's grown, he even steps up. He puts up, let's see here. He puts up 22 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals. I mean, that's a great game. The 5 turnovers, not so great. But for Bam Adebayo, especially in the playoffs, when we've seen him come up small, a lot of times, I mean, more often than not, he put up a huge game. Especially, it was encouraging to see when you see the other team's best big man go down, that your big man steps up and takes over. I mean, there were times when the Heat were playing the Sixers last season. I think it was either the last season or the season before. And Bam just looked helpless. He was getting eaten up by Joel Embiid. They tried to play him a little bit against the bench unit because they wanted to get him going a little bit more. And it didn't really do much. He on the defensive end, he was playing all right. He was getting some boards here and there, but he was mostly looking overmatched, outmatched, whatever you want to say. And so, rightfully so, we're all looking to see him step up the most. And game one, he did it. Game two, still waiting to be seen tonight at 9 o'clock. But so far, I've liked what I've seen from Bam. Gabe Vincent, he was a plus 11 in the game there. He ended up with 15 points and 6 assists. Max Strus, also, I mean, he put up only 8 points and 5 rebounds in this game. He wasn't anything crazy, but he, like I've talked about earlier in this episode, role players just being solid and consistent a lot of the times in the playoffs is what you need. And as long as Max Strus is doing that, playing some mistake-free basketball, only 1 turnover in 38 minutes, that's always going to be helpful. Caleb Martin off the bench, he had 15 points, 3 rebounds. This is a game where Kyle Lowry, again, didn't really do anything, but I'll give it to him. He wasn't making as many mistakes. He wasn't really being an overall negative. I mean, he was a -2 in the plus-minus, but he really wasn't a huge detriment to the team or anything. I mean, he only played 18 minutes, 2 points, 3 assists, 1 steal, but we are not going to see the Kyle Lowry of old where he's just, hitting all these threes, and we might see him take some charges here and there, but we're not going to see him really take over any games. If he does, then seriously look out for the Heat at that point. Kevin Love played well, though, 18 points, 8 rebounds, and this is something that if Giannis isn't there, you want to see all the big men, whether it's reserves, starters, whoever for Miami, start to actually play a lot better because he's not there. You don't have to worry about him. So if Miami can do that and exploit that fact, then they could definitely win this series, especially if Giannis doesn't come back. He did get ruled out, I believe, for Game 2. Yes, he got ruled out for Game 2 a little bit earlier today. So that's a thing to look for in Game 2 and see if playoff Jimmy stays around, see if Bam Adebayo can actually step up again and stay consistent in that area and actually grab Miami a win. So real quick, kind of touching on other things, the Lakers, they win Game 1. Memphis, Ja Morant, I mean, hopefully he is not going to have to deal with any more injury issues, but that was a pretty hard fall in his hand, and that looked painful. And the Lakers, Anthony Davis looked pretty dominant. And this was, like Jaren Jackson Jr. at the time didn't win Defensive Player of the Year yet, but he was on his way to, and didn't really look all that great when Anthony Davis was just feasting on the boards, grabbing offensive and defensive boards, really getting any shot that he wanted. He wasn't really, they were contesting him, but it wasn't doing much. So if the Lakers keep playing like that, then that's an upset series right there. As of right now, they're losing by 11 with around 9 minutes left in the second. So I haven't watched that game, obviously, because I've been here with you guys, but we'll see how that goes. Minnesota, Denver, that's one of the late night games that I haven't been watching because I really don't care about Minnesota at all. I don't really like watching them play. So I really think Denver is just going to take that in a sweep. I don't think that's really going to be anything crazy. I did not even talk about Boston and Atlanta. Probably because Boston is just kicking their ass. Boston is expected to kick their ass. They have been kicking their ass. And even when Atlanta, looked good in like the first quarter of the last game, Boston still kicked their ass. Which I expect to keep happening. I think Boston's going to sweep them. They took both at home pretty easily. They go back to Atlanta. I don't think home court is really going to mean that much in this game because the talent level is just so different between the two. So, I guess we'll see. But I think Boston's going to sweep that. The Clippers and the Suns have been a fun series so far, and I expect that to continue, especially without Paul George. The Clippers are going to give the Suns a lot of different looks to really try and match up with all of, their offensive firepower. You got Durant, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. Like those are 4 big guys that you're going to have to deal with at any given point. Kawhi Leonard has been a monster already. When Kawhi Leonard's playing like this, honestly, he's one of probably like top 3 guy for me to watch. Like since I've been alive. That's over, 28 years. I've watched a lot of good offensive players, mind you. I've watched, Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, all the guys from that era, Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, all the way up through, LeBron, Melo, everybody. And Kawhi, in his prime, and even up until now, when he is playing like he has been, is easily one of the most fun to watch because he's doing it a lot of times on both sides of the ball. And he has he just does. It feels like he never misses. It really feels like he's one of the most efficient people, and he can shoot the ball from fucking anywhere, and it's insane. I just don't get it. But Phoenix ends up getting the win in the last one, even with Westbrook actually playing a lot better offensively. But the one cool thing I think has been that Westbrook actually looks a little bit better defensively. I don't know if the defensive rating stats and everything back that up, but it's been fun to see Westbrook in the different like roles and the different utilizations that he's had in these 2 games so far. Let's see. So, yeah, his defensive rating in the last game was 136. So, not great. I wonder what it was here in game 1. It probably is along the same lines, to be honest. But, no, game 1, his defensive rating was 112. So, it was a lot better. His just offensive rating was nowhere near as good. But Westbrook's been fun to watch. Durant's fun to watch. Leonard's fun to watch. Devin Booker goes off. The whole series is just a great series to watch. The only reason I think Phoenix ends up winning this is strictly because Paul George isn't there. If Paul George was there, it's a completely different series because not only do you have that offensive firepower there, but Paul George being one of the best wing defenders in the league now gives you a lot better looks to cover guys like Durant and Booker because you can put Leonard on one and Paul George on the other and have a lot of other guys roaming and helping out with that. So that changes a lot of things. But, yeah, really the only reason I put the Suns ahead is because Paul George isn't playing. And then to finish things off, Sacramento and Golden State. As I said, Dennis is probably going to listen to this because he's not here this week, but props to him on the Sacramento prediction because they have been looking really fucking good. Sacramento's they're just fun to watch. Their offense has been really, really good. You got guys like Malik Monk coming off the bench and putting up huge games. You got even guys like Trey Lyles, who, I mean, he's been forgotten about for seasons, putting up solid games for a role player. Sabonis played so much better in Game 2 compared to Game 1, and he did very, very well. De'Aaron Fox is De'Aaron Fox. The dude is good. And so, something that has been overlooked a little too is Davion Mitchell. Even though he hasn't come in and, been an offensive difference maker all the time, his defense, just like it was in college, has really impacted a lot of the team's success. He has been able to lock down a lot of guys, even if it comes to, just locking them down in like the fourth quarter or the second half, or just locking them down in like little spurts, whatever it may be. That has been very important for this team because their defense is not very good at all. We talked about this on prior episodes that Sacramento's defense is around one of the worst in the league. But their offense has been so good that it's balanced it out to where they are now in the 3rd seed. But Davion Mitchell is probably one of the only reasons why the defense is what it is. So he has been a good X factor for them. And it's looking like Sacramento is probably going to win this game. And that takes me to my other topic here. Draymond Green was officially given his 1-game suspension for the stomp on Sabonis. I'm sure by now everyone has seen it. I mean, I'll bring it up here for those watching just in case. But it looks like in there that Draymond is trying to walk past and Sabonis grabs his ankle. But there's just, you can't defend really what Draymond was doing there. Like all right, here, let me just bring this up here. We'll zoom in a little as well. But it's just that, especially with Draymond's track record, you're not going to get away with much. I love the caption of this too, though. Draymond stomping on Sabonis is wild, but hopping off bro's chest and then clicking your heels is whimsically devious. But yeah, I think we've all seen it. Sabonis falls down there, and I I didn't even look at, honestly, the clicking of the heels and everything afterwards, but obviously the jump after that is so dramatic. This whole thing is dramatic. Like, both sides of it is way more dramatic than it needs to be. He's over there acting like he just got shot in the chest as he rolls around writhing in some sort of pain. He looks like he locks up Draymond's ankle at first, but looks like he also lets go pretty quickly. I'm not going to sit here and blame, like, Sabonis for any of it, but, like, Draymond, it looked like, I mean, he didn't need to step on him. He probably could have still stepped over him, but he's going to be dramatic. Sabonis is dramatic right back. And the thing that even got more dramatic after that is the fact that after the game, Draymond asks for an x-ray on his ankle because his ankle is sore. And then Sabonis is questionable with a sternum contusion. Like, come on, guys. You cannot tell me that he actually is going to cause Sabonis to maybe miss a game with that. Like, the stomp, like, there shouldn't be, like, you shouldn't stomp anybody in the chest in basketball. You really shouldn't. That's stupid. The whole thing is stupid. Like, I'm not sitting here defending Draymond Green doing this because it's not, like, he shouldn't have. None of this should have happened, to be honest. The grab of the ankle, the stomp, whatever. None of it should have happened. It's all dumb. But come on. We're really making this man questionable with a sternum contusion from this? We're really going to get that dramatic? And then to make it even more dramatic, I'll show you here Draymond, as he was leaving the game, over here calling people pussies, yelling at the fans, all that kind of stuff as he was walking out, you know, like yelling back at him and all that kind of stuff. I'm assuming that when you're the league looking at, like, do we suspend this guy? And then you look at all the other past times that he was suspended for things that he did. And then you watch what he did as he left the game because he was ejected. I feel like you probably are like, yeah, let's give him a suspension. I mean, come on. Like, if Draymond really didn't want to be suspended or anything, like, there's no way you do all of that and then think, oh no, why did I get suspended? Like, come on, man. The whole thing is just a clown show. And then final topic of the night for everybody. Jaren Jackson Jr. wins Defensive Player of the Year. De'Aaron Fox wins the first ever Clutch Player of the Year. And I just saw recently, actually, Mike Brown was named Coach of the Year. All of them are deserving, I believe. It was pretty funny, the whole scorekeeping debacle for Jaren Jackson Jr. We talked about it a few weeks back, but the whole, actually this was probably more than a few weeks. There was the whole conspiracy from Reddit that the stat keeper was, you know, giving him more blocks than he deserved and more steals than he deserved and things like that at home. That all was pretty funny, but Jaren Jackson Jr. had an excellent season. I don't think you could have gone wrong with giving it to him or Brook Lopez. They both had deserving seasons. De'Aaron Fox winning Clutch Player of the Year makes sense to me because when you look at stats for clutch time, when you look at it for like the last 5 minutes of the game, when the score is between 5 points differential or less, he has the highest amount of points per game in that time. He also has a higher percentage than the other guys that were up for it. A lot of people said Jimmy Butler should have won it, or DeMar DeRozan should have won it, or so on and so forth. But the stats pretty much all back up De'Aaron Fox winning it. And the man started the season with a buzzer-beating shot to win the game. I mean, that's how he started the season. And it seemed like he I mean, we watched that one, what was it, double overtime between them and the Clippers, I think it was, when Westbrook was on the first joined the team, and he hit many big shots down the stretch. I mean, we just watched De'Aaron Fox do that night in and night out, and I think he perfectly deserves this award. Big time award for him. I love that they're doing Clutch Player of the Year now. That's really cool, especially because we have the stats to actually back that up. So that's really cool. And I think Clutch Player of the Year honestly goes along with more, here are the stats, here's the award. Instead of, here's the narrative, here's the stats, who knows? Like MVP. But Mike Brown being Coach of the Year for what he's done with the Sacramento Kings, I think that was the obvious answer for Coach of the Year. People who debate that he should not win don't know ball. Period. That's it. End of story. But that is it for here, for us, for me, for everybody. That is it for this week of the Atlantic Files, the number one podcast on the number one division in the NBA. Brought to you by the Underdog Sports Podcast Network. Next week, we will have the usual hosts back on. We'll have Dennis back with me. Maybe even Mike if he's clear from tax season finally. But I will let you guys know next week will be the last episode for a couple weeks because not this Saturday, but next Saturday, I get married to the love of my life. So I'll have my wedding and a honeymoon, and we probably won't have an episode in that week during the honeymoon. So just giving you guys a heads up now. But thank you, everybody, for watching, and I'll catch you guys next week. Peace.